Hello and welcome to Power Reflections, a proud member of the Duff Network, where we reflect on Wildbow's most revived work as it releases. I'm Ruben Morehouse.
And I'm Elliot Diebold.
And what did you take a sip of water right before you went to speak? Or
I timed that real well.
I'll have to make sure that I don't accidentally edit out that very long pause. We're coming at you live here, which means we're not going to change anything that goes wrong, as you can see. Live in the Discord. Hi, say hi, everyone in the Discord.
Oh, hi, everyone in the Discord.
Oh, no, I meant they. Yeah, anyway. We're here to talk about 23.5 and 23.6.
Yeah. A couple of these are the chapters, and dare I say it, they really give you the vibe that we're heading into the finale, huh?
I don't even, don't even, because I think it's still the case that every time you say that, Wildbow adds a month onto the story.
I don't feel like I've said that since like arc 14 though, right?
So it definitely must be happening this time.
Well, I mean, I did build up a fair, queue by the end of arc 13. So that could have been an extra 10 arcs.
Can we just address this now? I've seen some comments in discussion threads and stuff of people thinking that it's annoying when we joke about the story ending, and being like, "Oh, they were so sure the story was going to end in arc 13." That was explicitly a trick by one, right? Like explicitly we were meant to think that the story was going to end in arc 13 to make the impact of what happened then so much more powerful, right? Like that was intentional. So don't blame us for that shit.
I do think up until arc 13, I had definitely been too willing to like I remember thinking arc 9 might be the end as well. Like I got stuck on the whole original 4 to 6 arc plan for too long.
Yeah.
But I'd like to think we got better after arc 14, and we've joked about it a lot since then. But
my personal headcanon is what was it, 14.12, the April Fool's chapter?
Yeah.
That was the actual end of the story when that came out, and everything since then has just been a hallucination of a dying Snowdrop.
Wait, Snowdrop? Wouldn't it be Cherry Pop?
No. Cherry Pop was because Snowdrop died during that chapter.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. She got run over.
Yeah. What are we talking about? So in 23.5, we're following Lucy, and the chapter starts with Lucy protecting a frog as Toadie rallies the troops to avenge John.
Yeah, and I really like how this chapter opens with like a little heading, like it just says later. Because first of all, that like abated the instant rage I felt when I realized we weren't continuing the conversation with the Sable immediately. But it also it sets up this fun dynamic for the chapter where the whole time, like I was reading this section, like the later kind of tells you that we will be going back to the Sable talk.
Yeah.
So it gives you this weird thing where you're looking for the effects before you've seen the cause. Like I was reading this whole segment going, okay, how does this tie into the Sable conversation? What is Lucy bringing forward from that? And that was just like a fun little, I don't know, incentive to play detective as you're reading. I thought that was really fun.
Yeah. It's this kind of fun thing that Wildbow does in chapters like this, I guess, of like wanting there to be little mini cliffhangers between unhanging moments in a conversation. And so playing with time to both set up those parallels, but also have these like cliffhanger moments, which I think is very fun. Or heavy moments.
And draw you in as a reader. Like it sort of creates free, easy mystery for you to engage with, which is engaging. I'm good with words.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, you should write this story.
I also love I guess one of the first things I noticed in this chapter is there's like the fight for this toad, and the little goblin gets it and is sort of hugging it, and Lucy like literally nudges her to safety And especially like last week, we had the whole conversation with the dogs about like fixing society and whether goblins were a part of that or whatever. And I just thought it was so funny that this chapter literally opens with Lucy nudging goblin culture in a good direction by protecting this little girl who likes toads. And they're like, obviously, this ends up being a chapter that is really focusing a lot on like what Lucy wants to be, how she's going to juggle all these forces in her life. And I think, yeah, opening it with this fun moment of her taking the violent goblin culture and steering it in the right direction is a fun first seed for that.
Yeah, very fun that Wildbow introduces this goblin character just so we can be heartbroken when they don't get an epilogue 1 year later.
I mean, I'm pretty sure this will be the main POV for the sequel. Like we were all.
So what's the name? What name would you give this goblin? Verona is thinking of names already.
Yeah.
Have you got any?
I'm bad at name. I think I'm like Avery tier goblin naming. Like, okay, I know it's a bad goblin name, but I really love the idea of calling it Toad Swaddle.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's not very.
It's a bad
rude
goblin name, but it's a good pun.
I had Frog Liquor. I tried to think of a really, really, graphic one, but I couldn't think of it. I guess the closest I got was Wartfucker. I don't know if that's a good goblin name.
Oh, but I think the little goblins, they don't get full on like swear words in their names yet. You have to like grow into that too. So tricky.
Speaking of toads, though, it's good to see Toady pulling this speech, rallying the troops. It did. As I was reading it, I was kind of like, oh, so the parents were kind of right that the Kennett others could have been doing more. That's what really stood out to me.
It definitely, although like it's interesting because like some of that doing more definitely is through coming from this angle of like, this is the one last push. This is, the day before they sort of retire from this fight. It's harder to go all in on doing all this stuff Toadie's doing if it wasn't part of like a big last push. And that kind of reminds me.
Fair.
Yeah, and that kind of reminds me of the original premise of the story almost, which is like the Kennett others waited ages to awaken the Kennetteers, and like Lucy brought that up. And Miss was like, "Oh yeah, sorry, us immortals, we get a bit confused about rushing things and like timing stuff. Like you lose perspective on that." And I think there's some echoes of that in the way that the parents have kind of had to come to the Kennett others and been like, "This is dragging on too long. End it now," or like one way or the other.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. It makes a lot of sense. Like they're happy to fight in a war that lasts for hundreds of years because they last for thousands of years. Like whatever.
Yeah, and like I don't know. Like a lot of them, I guess of like weren't happy with that status quo, but yeah, it kind of takes like a very mortal perspective to come in and be like, look, this might just be worth ending it one way or the other ASAP.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty funny. One of the first things that happens is like Toad Swallow starts his speech and he's like, yep, and Snowdrop's here and she's going to confer the full extent of her sagely magic on all of this. And Lucy immediately thinks to herself, which is nothing. And I was like, man, no wonder Guillerme left you. You're purporting to be a Fey duelist, and you're not giving respect.
You're not happy with the weasel words there.
Yeah, and everyone just being like, yeah, we believe in it, so it's real. Like this is like the whole Goblin Sage thing fits so perfectly into Toadswallow's whole Eighth Court thing because there's like something hilariously simply fairy about everyone just being like, yep, that's the sage and they're important, and it becoming so. Like that is the magic of the sage. Anyway, yes, I just thought it was funny that like Lucy has this weird gap in her perception around like soft power. Like it's just not the way she thinks, and it's just like a fun example of that.
Yeah, you're right. That is a good one.
But yeah, and I mean, because obviously, like this is as we were sort of touched on, a Lucy chapter that very heavily focuses on like her relationship with war, and another great sort of early seed of that is like Gashwad finally makes a little appearance. And it's been he kind of dropped out of the story most of the time, but he's our little guy who wants to be heavily war affiliated. He wants to be a fighter, but he's shit at it, and it's not what he's good at.
Mm.
So he's kind of like the opposite of Lucy in a way. And I love that we finally get a reappearance of him in this scene where, or in this chapter where she's kind of laying a claim on not being like that. Because he's here and he's like made himself into a little dog tag. You can summon him by stabbing stuff, and like, Lucy, in her goal to not be so war oriented, manages to take this new knife that she's been given and turn it into something that's less about stabbing and creating wounds and more about disrupting practice.
Mm. Yeah, it's a cool moment, isn't it? A very let's show how we can push somebody away from war type of moment, which is very
Yeah.
fun for this chapter.
Yeah, although, like, I don't know, I guess because I don't like Gashwad is keen to be more war oriented. It seems like, like all
Well,
she manages
yes.
to do is like turn working with him into like, okay, like I'll do that, but also you have to do this. Not like it's very reminiscent of how she works with the dogs, although with them it's a little bit more self guided. But like,
Mm.
it's like, how can I work with you and get the war benefits while also it being more than that?
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah, it's fun stuff. Um, so yeah, we're kind of jumping back as we discussed, and Lucy's with the Sable and kind of just hanging out with the Sable as it runs errands, I guess. Um,
Yeah.
Elliot, have you watched the Netflix Sandman show yet?
I've seen bits and pieces that my sisters were watching, but yeah, as soon as I saw in your notes that you wrote Sandman vibes here, I was like, oh, I fucking see it. I saw some
Yeah.
scenes in his like castle thing, and it's so similar to what I was picturing. Yeah,
Yeah, this kind of like decayed or decaying castle, a bunch of, you know, dead creatures, one step above ghosts. I don't know, like, um, very interesting. I really liked, the Sable has this kind of ethereal vibe and very much reaffirms throughout this entire chapter that they just don't think in the same way as Lucy. Similar to what you mentioned before about how the Kennet others like don't operate on a human timescale.
yeah,
Um, and it's so fun for Lucy to bounce off of that because Lucy is just the least likely to kind of like accept that as a
yeah.
reason for anything. It's just very fun.
Yeah, like she was the best person to like. I agree. There's like so many levels that this
Yeah.
is fun on like that.
Yeah.
Like because the other thing he brings up is he's got all of these like servants around, like the vampire and old mate who sucked at bringing his kids back from the dead and stuff, and like he keeps them in because he says like, oh, I want the diversity, like they offer perspectives I don't naturally
Mm,
have being a
mm,
spirit.
mm,
And what's funny is like all the ways Lucy challenges him is coming from that same angle too. Like she challenges him on this very human sort of mortal perspective, which is like the virtues he was just distilling in all of his uh servants is kind of exactly where she's coming from here too, which like kind of strengthens her argument in a really fun way.
mm.
Like and I guess we'll get into it more when the alabaster comes out, but I was instantly like, he mentions wanting her for a judgeship or saying she'd be a good judge very early on, and I could see that like as soon as this conversation started because I was like, oh, I think the Sable really enjoys how she rounds out his perspective. Like that's
Yeah.
here right from the get go. I think the Sable really likes Lucy.
Yeah, totally. And I think this is one of the things that's so interesting about the Sable is they are they have already kind of independently taken it on for them to ensure that they're not just like falling into their own perspective too much, right? Like they're
Yeah,
surrounding themselves with things that force them to have different perspectives, which is very like despite the fact that the Sable is frustrating to Lucy in this conversation, it never feels like the Sable isn't. I don't know. It is like a piece of shit, like Charles,
yeah.
like has an insular worldview and refuses to kind of listen to outside perspectives.
Yeah, like what's fun about the Sable is he's so frustrating in some ways, like when it comes to his neutrality and stuff, and
Mm,
there's obviously a whole conversation about that. But then yeah, like there's also a lot to really like about him. Like
yeah.
Hale has been talking to death about how isolation and lack of diversity and perspective is bad, and the
Mm,
Sable kind of immediately comes swinging out the gates with I'm doing my best to mitigate that. Like
yeah, totally.
um, and yeah, like he sort of hears Lucy out. Well, yeah, there's all these ways where it's like he is doing, he's doing so many things right. And like as Chat's pointing out too, he's specifically helping train people who might replace him because it's like important to him that if he does get replaced, it's by somebody who's good. And like
Yeah.
mad respect for that. So
Yeah.
just like,
Isn't it so interesting?
yeah, like he's simultaneously such a rare example of so many things we don't see enough of in people in this position, and then also just frustratingly short in others. It's a
Mm,
great dynamic.
yeah, yeah. I think the Sable is really fun in this chapter. Um, we also get to hear the Sable's thoughts about John and what happened there. Like the basic argument kind of boils down to, I guess, like Sable accepts, hey, John was kind of cheated, but that was the Alabaster mainly doing that, and they've been punished. So the Alabaster broke the rules against John. That doesn't mean we should break the rules for John, which does kind of have a logic to it, but also
Yeah.
is this very like stagnant worldview of like people can break the rules and they'll get punished, but we're never gonna change the way things are,
Yeah, and it gets dived into way more towards the end of the chapter. So like, there's a lot to talk about there too. But it's the thing that jumped out to me is he does really neglect to take accountability. I think Lucy is very fair when she specifically brings up the moment when John killed Yulda, kind of on the implicit promise that that would be the end of Yulda.
Yeah,
And the Sable did not clean that mess up adequately, as we have seen throughout this story.
yeah,
Um,
100%.
and he does a very good job of dodging any accountability. Like, he constantly keeps talking about how, like, whenever she brings stuff up about John, he's like, well, it was the Alabaster who let the bird in. And it's like, yeah,
Yeah,
well, Yolda shouldn't, like, the Hungry Choir shouldn't have been able to happen
yes,
if you'd
yes,
cleaned up the mess like you implied you would.
yeah, yeah. It is. It's really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a great point, and I guess we'll get. I think there's more of that a bit later.
Hmm.
So yeah, the Alabaster rocks up, and Lucy spends a bit of time just kind of observing how do the judges interact.
Yeah, and I really loved when the Alabaster, because like the Alabaster Assembly complements the Sable, and like they work together really well, right? Like, was it just me, or I was like, oh, these two have very different perspectives, but they are working well together to like round each other out and like coordinating. Like the Assembly would be like, oh, you're doing this, and he's like, well, it's my purview, and she's like, yeah, but we could do it more mercifully, so let me chuck one of my agents in there. He's like, oh, yeah, okay. Like, it felt like a taste of how the judgeships should work. Watching these two coordinate, I was like,
Yeah,
yeah, I was like, okay, first of all, this is highlighting to me how good a choice the Assembly was, and the Kennetiers were right to create her.
yeah,
But then, yeah, also just like, again, it's that diversity of operation. Like the Sable and the Alabaster both help each other here, and like, yeah, like they're better for their differences. Like you can see, she comes to him for advice as well as kind of injecting herself into his shit. Like
yeah,
I love their dynamic.
yeah. They actually seem like this is like a really competent seeming interaction in the sense that like this is just like how the judgeships should work. It seems
Yeah,
like, and it's kind of nice to see that, I guess.
yeah, and just especially because the two of them are so different but so suited to their roles. It's that intermeshing of the roles that we've never really seen before, I guess.
Yeah.
Is it sort of like, okay, we're seeing how there is a problem, and it's like, hey, how do we inject some Sable and some Alabaster energy to handle this in the best way?
Yeah. 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 It's good. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, should we talk about the censorship? Because there's a bit where they're talking, and the Sable deafens a few key words. So yeah,
God, he's fun.
that's funny stuff. So it's one of the inversion points near a church. It's overlapping a domain, closed space, static, 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 pushing for it to be inverted, an anti-domain for something to live in. So, I mean, presumably this is about Charles or Marcy, right?
It has to be Marcy. Yeah.
Because it's something near a church, overlapping a
It's also,
domain.
they say it's somebody who argues hard for this kind of stuff, which just made me think of
Oh, you
Bruce.
think Marcy?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just like, I wonder what that is. I wonder if that will be something important. I think it's very fun.
It is a very fun setup, isn't it? Like, this feels like one of those things, because there's another one where we learn that somebody has just been opening a bunch of doors to realms and not closing them behind them.
Yeah.
And then there's like, oh, and in the future there's going to be a lot of them, a lot of doors opening, and the Het Sable's like, yeah, that's another threat. That's fine. Go handle this one though, and like look into it. And I'm just like, okay, so it like, especially with those two things back to back, I'm like, okay, so should we be expecting this to happen? You know, in this final confrontation, is somebody going to come in swinging doors open, and Marcy's going to have some anti-domain with something cooking in it? It's very fun.
Yeah. It is fun stuff to theorize about. I love we're getting messages in chat about it being Crookie Rook, which I think is very fun.
Because we haven't. Have we fucking seen it?
No, there was a line, maybe this chapter or last chapter, where they reference Rook and are like, we don't know what she's up to. Like, and it
This
seems like
fucking
she's
woman.
still around, but like, but is she? Yeah, I don't know. Who knows what the fuck?
I honestly feel like if I like, Rook might be the worst person to be on a group project with of all time. Like, you know, I thought I ended up with some bad partners for group projects at university, but Rook, like,
Rook,
I think
yeah.
I'd rather burn something down than be on a team with her.
Yeah. But yeah, it's fun. There's a lot of fun little plot hooks in this discussion, isn't there?
Also, Big Daddy Mussa died. Which is, I don't know, like it's weird because it's so important and then also not. I don't know. It's a very
I mean, like, who's
a very odd moment.
Who's the Mussa? I guess Abraham would still be the Mussa patriarch now, or who's the Mussa patriarch? Because it's not.
Like I guess the point is like, as the Alabaster Assembly kind of brings up, it's who cares anymore? Like this family has really been fucked up by this whole thing.
Fucked by what they tried to do. Good stuff. That's nice to think about. It's a nice solid win for the Kennetiers, isn't it?
Yeah, well, and also I think reminds us of how scary the Mussas were at one point, which is important as we start to consider the future options.
Yeah. So yeah, the conversation kind of naturally turns to the offer that's been made to the judges.
Yeah, and we get the details on it, and it's frustratingly fun. It's exactly what you sort of expect.
Yeah, pretty bullshit, right? Like, it's such a it's such a frustrating thing for the Kennetiers to have to deal with, because it is just like big power saying, let's not rock the boat. You know,
like that's what, like, what's fun about it is it's so believable. And I think we talked about this last week too, even without the details. It's like, yeah, of course the practitioner UN is just like, look, we'll let you be legit and we'll pay off your debts, just like go back to normal. And it like, you know, no punishment or whatever. We just want you to stop.
Want stability.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it's a fun, like, as well, you know, I guess, just in case the whole this is the last push thing wasn't already sort of convincing you that this was the last push. Now we also have that it's like, okay, if we don't stop it before these world powers step in, it's going to be out of our hands.
Yeah, I mean, Charles isn't going to keep doing crazy fucked up shit, but also we're not going to be able to depose him, you know?
Yeah, but like, because this offer represents the end either way. Either they accept it and Charles gets legitimized and starts to play by the rules-ish, and kind of gets off scot-free, or we get a bunch of super mussers coming in, and that's not ideal either.
Yeah. Will Charles take this deal? Charles definitely thinks he has too much integrity to take it.
Yeah, but I think Lucy's bang on where she's like, man, this guy came back from being forsworn with Marcy by his side. Like, if those two are given this deal and they're kind of let off scot-free, but they're allowed to keep scheming, like, that's not...
Yeah.
Like, that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, which is totally fair.
Yeah.
So yeah, Lucy gets pretty righteously upset, and the Sable makes a very simple point here. Lucy would be a good Carmine.
Yeah, but before we do get to that offer, I do it like Lucy really lets rip into him in the lead up to this about like just how much she hates his neutrality bullshit and how it's clearly not really neutral because you add in a bias. Like it's basically Lucy / probably even Wildbow kind of screaming into the void at this like, centrist thing where it's just like, oh, well, if we ignore context and just take each case on its merits, then that's fair. And it's like, no, because you keep letting bad people get away with technically not illegal things each time, and it creates Charles. It's like, yeah, like I don't know. It was just I really enjoyed watching Lucy pop off about this topic because I feel like I have this conversation with people all the time.
Mm, yeah. 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 It's very interesting. The moment of Lucy potentially being the Carmine is such a gut punch. It's just like it really there's like a warped sense of logic to it, but then of course hanging over this entire scene is Jasmine's point about not wanting Lucy to belong to war. It's such an interesting kind of setup that has been constructed here. I really love it.
Yeah, well, and because like to what you said about the plan kind of having that twisted warped logic, what I love about it is the plan is actually it's a very very good plan to make Lucy the Carmine if you don't consider the context, which is like the Sable's whole thing that he was just going on about. Because like, okay, yeah, Lucy would definitely be a good judge. She's like very law focused. She's always had a sense of fairness and justice. And like also, we've heard so much about like how judges kind of get locked in with the energy they take the role in. And like Lucy taking the role in a fit of like righteous justice and evening the scales is actually a great tone for a Carmine to come in on.
Mm,
Um, Plus, I think this segment, like when you've got the assembly, the Sable, and Lucy, I think we really see how well she acts as a third to the two of them. Like we're just talking about how great the assembly and the Sable were at balancing each other out. The fact is, Lucy brings another third really good angle to their discussion, and like, there's a reason she kind of comes out of it with the win. It's because she can go toe to toe with them and provides this third angle. Like she rounds them out the same way she does Verona and Avery. Like it's a really really good plan if you just don't consider the wider context, and I think that's why it's so funny that the Sable is fully on board with it.
mm, yeah. Yeah. It is very interesting.
Yeah, and then like as you said, the Jasmine stuff is kind of hanging over. I mean,
Hmm.
particularly this moment, but also the whole chapter, because
Yes, for sure.
like this chapter is very much Lucy kind of staking her claim as to where she stands with regards to war
Mm,
specifically.
mm.
And I think that's what's fun about this chapter is the chapter kind of proves and disproves Jasmine's whole point.
Yes.
Like war is clearly after Lucy. She's clearly been kind of flirting with Lady War the entire story.
Mm,
Um, but also Lucy keeps fixing war and keeps like talking people out of not like letting it not be an all-consuming thing. So it's just like
yeah.
it's so funny that it's like I think Jasmine is so right to be worried about this as a parent, as somebody Lucy isn't sharing all the information with. But like it's also so clearly like Lucy is doing so much to help war, but then also you don't want your daughter to be the person doing that. So it's
Yeah. It's yeah. It's really interesting. I love the way that hung over this chapter so heavily. Thought it was great. Um, so yeah, Lucy demands restitution here, power to herself, the Kennetiers, and the dogs in exchange for how they fucked over John, as well as not agreeing to this UN deal too quickly.
and I think the Sable keeps saying, "Oh well, the Alabaster Doe died, and that's
Mm,
because of what she did to John or whatever." And I love that Lucy just comes in here and she's like, "Nah, not enough. I want
yep.
more."
Yeah.
And the new Alabaster is like, "Yep, fair cop. Let's do it."
Yeah. I love that the Alabaster agrees, and that kind of forces the Sable to agree as well. It's very fun.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, it feels very good. Like again, as Lucy kind of thinks, um, it's still not justice, but it's something.
yeah. Well, I think yeah. No, I mean, I fully agree with that sentiment, and I think the really interesting mechanical thing on top of it, because what I love about this story is it's always both. The Aurum, sorry, the Alabaster basically sets up a thing where she's like, "Hey, well, look, I owe you, Charles owes me, Probably makes sense for you to just take the debt straight from him if you can. Which obviously feels like a big fucking sword for Lucy to be packing in her sheath as they go to fight Charles this last time, as she now essentially has jurisdiction to claim a huge debt of power from him.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's going to be very fun when we see that bill come due.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. um. So yeah, Lucy goes to find Guillaume, only to find him gone. But she does find Chloe, and they share a tender moment together.
Yeah, and the moment with Chloe is so good. Like it's just in this whole chapter where she's sort of been saying no to becoming fully Wars, it ends with this moment. Like Chloe's just such a good choice because obviously Chloe's always been like a cinnamon bun, except for the times where she was trying to kill Lucy.
Mm,
Um, and so like she's a great person for kind of representing the fact that you can not be like a violent monster.
mm,
You can just be like a dork who likes sweaters. And then also, yeah, I don't know, like it's an other. It's also like a Sable jurisdiction other. Like Chloe is very death oriented, so it's just like it's such a good person to have this moment of Lucy rejecting war with.
yeah, yeah, it is very good. Yeah, it gave me the end of this chapter gives big and I guess all of these chapters give big everything's changing energy. And we had
Yeah,
just watched Steven Universe, an episode of Steven Universe about this exact same thing right before I started writing these notes. So it was very funny to me that these two really align so perfectly.
I read it just before we watched the episode, so I was like, and then you said that, and I was like, oh, it is kind of the same thing.
Yeah. So as long as Lucy doesn't make a giant pink arena to trap her friends in and not let them out and slowly crush them, then yeah, that'll be great.
Which is something she's been known to do, just like Steven. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the other thing that you mentioned that we haven't talked about was Big G
Yep.
has done a runner.
There he goes.
Another father figure of Lucy's bites the dust.
Yeah.
Although,
good luck, grandfather. You're up next.
no, I mean it's really interesting though because like this was a chapter. We've seen John get brought up a few times in recent chapters, and every time he comes up, Lucy is either on the verge of tears or is just crying. And like this is still such a sore point for it. Whereas like finding out Guillaume's gone, it was a bit of a like she was just kind of like oh well. Like I thought it was really interesting that like the way things had gone there. Like I don't know.
Well, I think Guillaume had kind of been going for a while, right? Like which I think complicates the emotions of the situation.
Well, it's like the difference between an unexpected death versus like somebody who's had a terminal illness for a while, right? Like
for sure.
It hurts in a different way.
Yeah.
And I think she's been mourning him for a while, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. Like I feel like some of the symbolism of what this means has kind of gone over my head, but it feels like a big moment that Guillaume is sort of like, yeah, look, I'll be back tomorrow to help with this final fight, but after that, I'm going into the court. Like he's just fully moving on, and I guess Kenneth was him mourning his love or whatever, and getting ready to go to winter. And I guess this part of his life is over now. That like, yeah, it feels big.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of things, a lot of big things happening.
Yeah, like I'm and yeah, like obviously the chapter doesn't contain Lucy making her statement on like what she's going to be instead of being a Carmine. But it's clear, like she specifically references the whole holding knife style. I'm really keen to see what her exact statement is. Presumably fairly soon.
Yeah. Should we get into the next chapter?
Let's do it.
So we're in Verona's head for 23.6, and for somebody who supposedly hates math, Verona spends a lot of time obsessing over a single percentage point.
Yeah, she's I don't. Well, yeah. She's a bit all over the shop as we find her trying
Mm,
to get out of bed. I think this is really funny to reread because on the second time you're really appreciating that this was a 2 hour nap. She has not been sleeping, and like
yeah,
we're already talking about how fucked up she was last arc,
yeah.
and it's like she's given herself like a day and then a 2 hour. Like it was funny. I found Verona very relatable in this chapter, which is like I remember the conversation I had with Jay and Megafire a few reflecting episodes ago, where it was like I stopped kind of relating to her as much as she started to get her shit together, and then like this chapter was like, oh, Verona's very relatable again all of a sudden. Then as the chapter went on, I was like, oh yeah, she's not doing so well.
Mm, yeah. Um, yeah, Verona's really not doing well. It really stuck out to me of how difficult it is for Verona to get out of bed at the start of this
Mm.
chapter. And it's like a bunch of paragraphs. Like it's a solid amount of time where Verona's just struggling to get up. It's like 10, 12 paragraphs or something before
Yeah,
she even can sit up. The only thing that gets her there is thinking that if she doesn't, something like Avery dying might happen again, which is obviously not a good vibe.
yeah. Like that was what jumped out to me is like all of those paragraphs where she's unable to sit up is when she's thinking about like good things, like she's
Mm-hmm.
looking at Pigeon and Squirrel and like
Yeah.
Macaulay. Like there's all these good things going on, and the thing that actually kind of pushes her out of bed is the guilt around Avery and stuff. And it's like she's very much driving herself and being motivated by like
Mm.
very negative things in this chapter, and that's like a concerning tone to be coming into. This again, this thing that constantly happens with the Kenneteers, where I'm a bit like, well, whatever works for the next 12 hours, right? Like, you know, um, but it's like bad energy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah. I don't know. Verona's it's a hard time.
Yeah, although, like I do think we'll obviously get into where it goes in this chapter, but I think it's just a part of a bit of a pattern. I think we are really seeing in this arc so far, each Kenneteer has get really been getting faced with a big opportunity to backslide, and then we're seeing how their networks and
Mm.
relationships are meaning that
Mm.
they're not.
Yeah.
Like, um, for all her troubles in this chapter, which we'll cover, like Verona ultimately does pretty well, and she gets a lot of people
Yeah.
to lean on.
Yeah.
It all goes pretty well in
Yeah.
the
It does.
end.
It does okay, doesn't it?
Yeah, and like with varying success, she's kind of able to understand and work with her human limits, which is something she didn't enjoy
Yeah.
doing at the start.
Yeah, you're
Um,
right. That's a really good point because it is. This is something I noticed about Verona's network really kind of covering her gaps here for her.
yeah,
But yeah, it's interesting to think about that as an extension of the growth of the, Verona and the characters, I guess.
yeah. Like I think early story Verona would be in these bad kind of spots, but not realize and double down. Whereas this Verona kind of like when she pushes herself too far like this, she's able to get fixed up by the people around her, and I don't think she used to have that. And
Yeah.
that's like very similar to last week. We talked about the chapter where Avery very nearly backslid into being quiet and just avoiding talking to
Mm,
anyone.
mm,
And then basically Putnam and Snowdrop yanked her out of it. Like, and we've had Lucy being tempted a lot by just becoming a bit of a rage monster and being offered like the Carmine role and stuff. And she's got all these other people, like especially the dogs, ironically, and then yeah, people like Chloe keeping her with the resolve to not be that person. So we're really like seeing at the moment each of the Kenneteers have kind of been offered the ability to repeat mistakes they made that got them into the start of this story, and all three of them are kind of not making those mistakes
mm.
because of their networks. This is why Kenneth is good. It's I guess yeah, as all of Kenneth gears up for this final fight, we're seeing why Kenneth is important.
Yeah. 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 It's good stuff. So yeah, Verona is cooking up a homunculus, an anti-augury homunculus. And I
Well,
think,
let's just wait till we get there. I think it like yeah,
yeah, yeah, that's fair. I definitely
we'll
like
talk about it.
first read of this though. I was thinking like this is to counter like Seth or whatever, right? I didn't
Yeah.
have judges in my head, so really, yeah, we'll get to it, I guess.
I mean but isn't that the classic Verona thing? You think she's doing something, and then it's like, oh yeah, she's aiming for about a 7 out of 10, right? And it's like, no, she did
Mm.
it. She hit a
Nah,
15.
this is an 11 out of 10. Um,
So I do just want to say though, like we'll get to the man himself in a bit, but I did really enjoy just the like, I guess like lore dump sort of like the way Gillette was kind of used as a thing for Verona to monologue about what she was doing and why, and it was just kind of this fun little lesson for us as readers as to what her alchemy kind of looked like.
Mm,
Like I just enjoyed as a reader getting to kind of work through and again feel like we're seeing one of those systems which is just a whole magic system.
yeah, yeah. It's yeah. There's a lot that could be dived into, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Quick moment where Verona gets Gillette to slap Verona's cheeks a few times just to wake her up. Like that's the only thing that can get her awake now is getting slapped in the face.
I mean, we've all been there, right? Like,
I mean, yeah, but still, it's not a good sign.
no, well, yeah, true. Yeah, especially like again, the thing that always concerns me about stuff like this, I'm like, Verona, in like 12 hours, you need to be getting ready to start the main fight. Like, you know, like this is the time to rest up as well as prepare. You don't want to start the fight at zero.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah, like this chapter's so interesting for Verona's whole vibe for me because on the one hand, I'm like even if we look at this alchemy, it's like it sucks how much it's she's really struggling. Like she keeps noting like this is the part of alchemy that she doesn't like. Like she's in the real like the grind part of the difficulty curve where it's like she's building the skills and the foundation. That just means putting the work in, and that's really draining on her, and it seems really hard. And it's like on the one hand, the whole vibe around it and how miserable she is in this chapter is just kind of concerning. But then on the other, like it's a real chore right now doing it. And we know how Verona's gone with chores at various points in her life, but she's able to like just sort of find the motivation and hunker down and do it. So that's like positive. It's like I can't find myself a little unsure how worried to be about Verona at the end of this chapter because it's like so many things go well as the like red flag. There's like these red flags that come up, but then little green ones knock most of them down. So I'm like, oh, are we worried then or not? Like,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
given the line that this chapter ends on, I think it's fair to be pretty worried. It's quite ominous, but we'll get to that.
yeah, sure.
So yeah, Verona forgets what time it is. Whoops, it's 12 hours later than she thought. I'm sure it'll be fine. It's very funny that her domain does this to her.
Yeah, and like the delivery is so funny because like Macaulay sort of has to act as like her beleaguered mum here, where she's a bit like, "Wait, what time do you think it is?" And then like there's the great moment where she's like, "Oh, the fact that you don't even know if it's AM or PM is just like so like." Because I think more often than not, we've seen that role go the other way, where Verona has been helping Macaulay. So it's just always nice when Macaulay kind of gets to return the favor like this and just be like, "Oh, you can't be serious right now."
Yeah.
But
It's good stuff. It's very nice that Macaulay and all of the hooligans, I guess, can be a support system for her. This is what we're talking about, right? Like,
yeah,
she's built up a group that she trusts enough to hand off things that she wouldn't have been willing to hand off in the past.
yeah, exactly. And like Verona in a little bit with Avery is going to remind us that she's not really a team player in the traditional sense. She doesn't like team sports, that sort of thing. Um, but like obviously, that's not to say that she can't work with other people because that's clearly what she does here. Like I really enjoy again that way that even like Pale even has a diverse spread of ways that you can be cooperative.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, Verona is off to do a errand, grabbing some food, visiting the post office where her package is there right on time. But she still Karens out on this poor
Ferris,
Ferris. That's it. This poor post office worker.
whose last name I assume is
Bueller.
Bueller.
Yeah, I mean he's lost. He went on a day off adventure and got lost and never got back to school. This is alternate timeline Ferris Bueller.
Yeah. I do really enjoy how even Kenneth found can't fix the bureaucracy of the post office being a huge pain in the ass, miserable experience. Like There's few things I hate more than going to the post office. I hate it when I'm expecting a package and I come and I've just got the little slip and I have to go pick it up.
Oh yeah, that happened to me the other day. Very annoying.
It's just the worst.
I love. We can add another one, by the way, to the Wobbo weird milk scenario counter that we're keeping track of. But yeah, it's just such a ridiculous scenario. Like, yeah, your delivery arrived, just not the actual
contents.
stuff. Like it's
such bullshit.
Yeah, I can't wait to see this happen. This be Amazon supports defense for things going forward. It's so ridiculous.
It's so, yeah, because it's like, oh well, we needed to do it to not be like gainsaid or forsworn because we
Yeah.
guaranteed it would arrive at this certain day. It's like, don't fucking guarantee it then. Like that, like this is everything that's wrong with the seal in just the most benign setting. If you ask me, it's like if you can't guarantee, like, just don't. This is stupid.
Very silly.
Yeah, I don't know. It is funny though because like as you said, Verona kind of Karens out on Ferris a little bit, but like I think she's extraordinarily fair, and part of me's like, okay, well, Ferris, I think she sorted him out, but like after this story's over, we need the Verona epilogue chapter where she's just on the phone with these people's customer support complaining about the fact that they sent her this package that was empty, because I feel like they're not getting enough anger directed at them right now.
Yeah. Oh, very silly. So yeah, Avery shows up and the pair talk about milking goddesses, germic genocide, and the upcoming fight. Lucy joins in and struggles to catch up to this weird conversation.
I do really like how Avery is almost immediately like, wow, you're shit stirring me a lot. You usually only do that when things aren't good. Are you okay? Like, just one of those fun little beats about how well Ave understands Verona now and is just kind of immediately able to be like, hey, is everything all right? And like, I don't know, the transition to actually having a D&M with Verona and getting her to tell you what was wrong at earlier points in the story was like pulling teeth. And luckily they're able to save doing that for later.
Yeah. Wild. So Lucy comes in and notices how messed up Verona's hand is and kind of does this perfect level of support where she demonstrates to Verona that she cares, but not so much that Verona feels smothered. And Verona even thinks, oh, that was perfect. So that's just another nice little bit of the trio's gotten so good at, I don't know, like being friends with each other.
Yeah, and there's a few of these moments. Like there's the other one where Avery kind of goes on about how she's not feeling so hot right now, and both the other two are like, "You fucking idiot! Everyone loves you. Like, shut up." And it was one of those things where I was like, as I was reading, I was like, "Oh God, I miss these scenes of just the trio hanging out." And then even the three of them are like, "We don't do this enough." It was like, yeah, I agree. Just a couple of epilogue chapters as well of just the three of them talking like this would be great.
Yeah.
Start making my list of 400 epilogue chapter ideas. Put this as number 1 through 3. I also like. I think as well, just like the joy of the scene is also captured by the humor in it. Like, there's obviously all this talk of visualizing milking Miss that Avery brings up, and like. I love that because it's just funny. Like it's funny watching them all like talk about this traumatic subject. But it's also like a much more like I feel like in the early story it would have been Verona teasing Avery and Avery kind of being like, oh haha, but like not fully, whereas like this time Avery's the one who kind of brings it up and like I don't know, like again at the same time, as much as it was like reminiscent of even the conversation they had in the very first chapter as the three of them were walking to the awakening ceremony and they were talking about like Miss Hardy and stuff, it also felt like a very different version because they've all grown a lot. I really loved it.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we've been talking about growth in this chapter and last chapter. This really helps bring it home.
Yeah. I also just I don't know. Yeah, like it was a good classic Kenneteer interaction that also highlighted how much better they are now. I loved it.
Yeah. So yeah, they're fun goofing around time for the Kenneteers.
Yeah, but the fun is all over now. We've got to get back to business.
Yeah. But so since the milk hasn't arrived, Verona heads to the closest god she can think of that she can milk, which is Tashlit. And this completes the homunculus. And Elliot, you've put a great picture. What's his character's name from Owl House?
Tanella Noza.
Tanella Noza. Yeah, great. Which I think is a pretty good headcanon for what this homunculus looks like.
I have to assume I am not the first person to make this joke because just immediately I was like, well, that's Tanella Noza. Although, yeah, like Alexander. So Alexander is who we're talking about.
Yeah.
And I like what a worthy successor to Percival, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, it is the perfect evolution of Sir Percival for sure.
Like, I just immediately 100% stand him.
Yeah.
Which is a feeling I have not had since Percival.
Yeah. It's very good. It's very good.
I also like, and again, just making the anti-augury thing Alexander themed is funny on so many levels. Like, obviously, because it's anti-augury and it's Alexander. That's funny because he was our first augur. Plus, it specifically fucks with Charles and Seth. And it just like, from a story perspective, I was a bit like, I don't know, again, as it feels like we're probably moving into a finale, fucking, I don't know, fool me 100 times or whatever, but like, Alexander was like the story's OG villain. And like, it's nice to have him have a little moment here in the finale, even if it's a bastardized little, but like, version of him.
Yeah. It's very funny. It's just such a weird move.
I just, all the descriptions of him just make him so hilariously irritating. Like, he's smugly smirking and looking down at everyone, and then when he starts talking, it just seems like Lucy's immediate reaction is, "Are you sure we haven't cursed ourselves?" And it's like, it's so good.
Yeah, it's well, here's the funny thing to me is Alexander immediately starts blathering, right?
Yeah.
Which we later find out means that Charles is spying on them, basically, right?
No, they start talking about Charles, and that's when he starts.
Oh, I see.
He's quiet, and then it's like they're like, "Oh, I suppose we better get him to go." So they just like, it's like, maybe we should talk about our plan, and then he immediately just starts talking.
Yeah, nice. Okay, so that was planned. But yeah, it's great stuff. Oh, we should call out. We missed this bit where Tashlet also heals Verona to alleviate some of her hand pain a bit, which is very lovely. And Verona's like, "Oh, that's such a waste of energy. How dare you waste energy healing my hand?" But it also kind of heals Verona's soul a little bit, which is very nice.
Yeah, like, I love the line that you've actually pulled out here in the notes, which is like where Verona thinks, "Oh, this was a big sacrifice. That was healing someone else could have used."
Yeah.
And then she thinks for a second, she's like, "Actually, it is also healing that I needed."
That I could have used and did use.
Yeah, and again, just one of those moments where it's like, this is not the Verona from Arc 12 or whatever who lost the last fight. Like, if we're talking these moments for the Kenneteers to show their growth, this is a big one.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, sorry, I want to call out as Zizza did its comment in the chat that they reckon the original Alexander would have loved Alexander. And I do agree. He would, like, I can imagine Alexander trying to look into Kennet and seeing Alexander and just chuckling with it. He would have, like, in much the same way we've seen Charles kind of laugh off some of Verona's more annoying things. I could totally see Alexander enjoying this shit-stirring attempt.
Yeah. That would be pretty funny to see. I would love to see Alexander getting to meet Alexander. What a good time it would be. So yeah, Charles arrives and tries to act all cool, like it doesn't bother him, but the fact that he and all the other judges show up kind of betray the fact that it does.
Yeah, this is so funny.
Yeah.
Like, just all the higher powers are just sort of immediately here, and Macaulay's just saying, oh, "What the fuck have you done?" Like, this is what being friends with Verona is, and Macaulay is quickly learning.
Yeah, it's very funny. It's so satisfying. Charles is like desperately trying to act cool, but clearly it doesn't work. The fact that the Alabaster and the Sable immediately give over parts of themselves to be excluded is hilarious because that's like such a big thing for them to do, right? Like it
Yeah,
feels very big. And they just do it, no question. And Charles is like, I don't even care about this thing.
yeah, yeah. He's standing there. He's like, it actually doesn't work as well as you were hoping.
Yeah,
So it's like not even that big a deal. And it's like, meanwhile, Sable and the Alabaster just immediately like, yes, exclusion, please.
yeah.
Um, yeah, that's so funny. I really love the moment where Verona gets it to transition to list number two, like because it's just the whole time Alexander is talking about stuff, and then she just gets him. Once Charles is there, she gets him to switch to like, "You are the problem." Like it's like all that little voice that sits in the back of your head that is like the
Hmm.
opposite of your confidence, all your insecurities. She just and then yeah, she just gets into. It's such a funny little power move. I loved it.
Yeah, it's very funny. Um, but we go from funny to not very funny when this chapter starts to wrap up. Um, because the final line of this chapter is, "Can it rests in our hands?" Miss said. Verona's arm jumped, hand run through with a lightning bolt of pain, jarring enough that she would have dropped anything she was gripping. Right. I mean, it's just like so overtly Verona is not in a position to be able to effectively handle what they have to do.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely as we're heading into this big fight. Um, it's hard not to come into it being like, oh boy,
Mm.
with Verona because yeah, yeah, I can't. This is so hype. Yeah. Don't know that I've been this excited since either Arc 13 or Arc 17.
Mm. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Um, I guess we haven't actually really talked about Verona's hand much, which
Mm.
we should do now because obviously it's throughout this chapter. Like there's a very clear line I think drawn in this chapter between Verona pushing herself too far and her hand acting up.
Mm.
Which is like not exactly new information, but this chapter really goes out of its way to make Verona consciously acknowledge that link. Um, and yeah, like I'm so curious to see what is going to happen with Verona's hand. I guess as the story wraps up, because like obviously there was a conversation after it happened with Guilherme where Guilherme sort of outlined that she might be able to undo it at the end of the story or whatever. Um, but he seemed to think that was incredibly unlikely. And I guess all the stuff around the hand as well. Like I remember when Guilherme gave Verona, I can't even remember what it was, but when he gave her the thing that she used to fuck up her hand,
Mm.
um, he was talking about the fact that he'd given her the High Summer Rose originally to teach her moderation, and that hadn't worked, and she'd just given it to Avery. Um, but then he gave her the whatever it was that shattered her hand, and like that was an example of her failing those lessons in moderation because obviously she used it too many times and hurt herself and arguably for no reason. So it's like the symbolism of the like Verona's hand injury has always been really interesting because it's kind of a really tangible thing for her of like knowing her limits and understanding her limits, and I'm very interested to see what that looks like at the end of the story, I guess, because in a way, I don't know, getting it fixed kind of feels not right to me. Yeah, but
Mm.
I don't quite know why, and Wobbo's proved me wrong many times in the past, but like I'm so curious to see where it goes.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I don't know. I don't know where it's going to go. Who knows? Will it
Yeah, like
ever heal? Will we get Verona healing her hand through the resolution of this story? I don't know.
yeah, because in a way, I love the idea of Verona having a symbol of like I think it works. Her hand kind of is cool in the idea of like it's a symbol of like Verona having this thing of helping her acknowledge her human limits, and in a way, kind of like being reminding her that she is human, like she has these limits and stuff. It's just it comes in the form of this like chronic injury, and I feel weird wishing that on her. It's like I want some sort of middle ground where it's like she doesn't have to put up with this pain all the time. But I love for Verona the idea that she has this kind of built-in sense of yeah, like her humanity and her human limits.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. But that's the end of our chapter, huh?
Yeah, we're. I mean, it feels like we're. I didn't realize like this chapter kind of jumped us ahead a bit with how close we are to this final fight. It certainly seems like we're going to be getting into it pretty damn soon.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, definitely does. Um, but it's not the end of our episode because we have some comments to pull out. If you want to leave us your predictions as we approach maybe the finale question mark, you can do that by going to the Power Predictor form linked in the show notes down below. But we also pull out some comments from the Reddit discussion thread sometimes. Why don't I start with my one? My one is from user Psycho Canuck, who talks about one that it's funny that Verona distracts herself from her hand pain by tormenting Avery with divine, milking. I
Mummy
guess.
milkers is
Yeah.
what's written here, Rube.
Yes. Thank you. But then, kind of an extension of that, it's very heartwarming that the mentions of Verona's hand pain seem to subside a bit when she's just hanging out with Avery and Lucy. Like, rejuvenating herself is helping to alleviate the hand pain, which I think is really great.
Yeah. Yeah, I hadn't even really picked up on how much they abated when that was happening, but that's a great point. Like again, and like another reminder of how much they're clearly like it feels like the hand pain is like a thing to do with stress and overworking herself. And when she's
Yeah.
sitting here charging herself, it gets better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I've pulled out a Reddit comment in the same thread on 23.6 from Zavazz.
That's the name.
Yep. And basically, I pulled this out because they've focused on a part of the chapter that we totally forgot to mention, which was obviously the fucking blood moon is we're finally seeing a blood moon on screen. It's just like in Breath of the Wild, everything turns red, and Luna like starts knocking people off balance and turns all like crazy bunny, and so this is specifically makes a call out to the rabbit from the Holy Grail, like Monty Python thing, which I enjoyed. But yeah, like just kind of the general hype around the blood moon being a thing is very exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's we didn't really touch on it that much, I guess, but yeah, it's wild. It's a wild vibe.
Yeah.
We also had a discussion question this week, Elliot.
Yeah. We asked everyone to give us some ideas for lost foods.
Yeah. Which was a very fun thought. And we got, again, as we always do when we do questions like this, we got a few foods which were crazy to hear about. Some real ones. There were some fictional ones too, but I guess I'll start with this one. Propaganda Pagoda started by describing a few different types of things. But the thing that really stood out to me was a real thing called dripping pudding, which sounds insane.
I had to Google that because I was confused, and then I had to Google it again because the answer made me more confused.
Yeah. Traditionally, it was called dripping pudding. So this is a pudding made from eggs, flour, milk, water, but also traditionally called dripping pudding because it was baked under a roast hanging above it, which dripped fats down onto the pan of batter. So they have fat, meat fat in them. Is this a thing that this is just like a British food? Fucking Brits,
Yeah.
I swear to God.
What upsets me about it is, like, I can actually get behind the idea of like a a pie pastry thingy with like meat oil in it. But they add sugar, and that's where you lose me. Like, I don't. It's either savory or it's sweet. Why is this pudding made with both
Yeah, for
the
sure.
meat grease and also sugar?
Yeah,
I I can't wrap my head around
yeah, yeah. It's gross. It's gross.
it. Yeah. They also, yeah, they listed off a bunch of other stuff here too. Um. I'm trying to think. There's a thing called a choco taco.
Mm-hmm.
Um. But like using all these fucking gross spicy jellies as the sauce.
Mm.
Is a choco taco, is that just like an ice cream sandwich? I did a quick Google and it looks like it's just a kind of ice cream sandwich.
Mm. Yeah, it's a weird one. It's a weird one. There's some weird food out there in the world, huh? I feel like every time we do a question like this, it's like surely we can't
Yeah,
find more new. Surely there aren't new, more weird foods that people haven't already sent to us.
but there are.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, I just want to call out Shmee001's answer
Mm-hmm.
quickly, which was like they talked about a few ideas, but like the one that I think we both latched onto was trying to make like identical peanut butter sandwiches. So you make a
Mm.
peanut butter sandwich or something, and then you try to make another one and make it as identical as you can.
Mm.
Or like I think it'd be funny and like all packed up too to have us doing it together, but we can each only touch our own sandwich.
And we have to merge the sandwiches to one combined or identical type of sandwich. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very wild. It's a really weird idea. I loved it.
Yeah, they also mentioned low effort lavish feasts, which was
Mm.
just like a thing where they're like, I don't know, do like try to do something that seems extravagant but isn't, which I just immediately pictured like a kid's birthday party thing, like big fancy bowls just full of like cheesels or um like fairy bread,
Mm.
like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like lots of brown food, that sort of thing.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. Um, so we also got Fancy Swamp, who talked
Sorry.
about.
Before we go into fence, I'm gonna say our chat is continuing to discuss this idea that like greasy fats and stuff are actually great for desserts, and you're all cursed.
Yeah, that's psychotic. Come on, everyone knows that that's not how things work. Yeah, so Fancy Swamp mentioned deep fried butter, which I kind of didn't believe, but Googled and is real, and that's crazy.
It makes me want to vomit just thinking about, because it's like you're still biting into butter, right? Like,
Yeah, right.
and like I once bit into a slab of butter on a dare as a teenager. It still makes me sick thinking about it.
Yeah, it's
Like, it's so
pretty
rich.
wild.
You can't have more than one bite of deep fried butter. I just don't believe that you can do that.
Yeah. But yeah, so then also sour pizza. And I had this thought that, like, I'm sure when I was a kid, I would have thought that, like, candy on a pizza would be something that I would enjoy, even though obviously it's crazy. But I'm thinking about the idea of, like, sour worms or something on a pizza. And, like, that's such a wild idea. I kind of want to try it.
Yeah,
So,
I've definitely had pizzas with sour ingredients on them. Like, I'm
hmm.
curious what exactly Fancy Swamp meant by, is there such a thing as sour pizza? Because I was like, well, I've had pizzas with sour cream on them. Like,
Would you call
yeah.
sour cream sour? I wouldn't call sour cream sour. And before you say it's in
What?
the name, Elliot, it's not. That doesn't mean anything.
I don't know, but yeah, it's funny you brought up candy pizzas because I did one of those like a few years ago and it was great. I think
Was
it's so
it?
funny that you're like, everyone would think this is a great idea as a kid. It's like, because I definitely don't have the most refined palate. And I was like,
What
I have
did
no
you
idea what the
have on
fuck he's
it?
talking.
What was on it?
Oh, well, so like chocolate sauce, marshmallows, gummy bears,
Yeah,
like
yeah. See,
um,
chocolate sauce and marshmallows. Because like we had a we ordered some pizzas a few nights ago, and one of them was like a Nutella calzone kind of thing, right? And I'm like, okay, that's fine.
exactly.
But it's the gummy bears or like sour worms or kind of candy that would really put me over.
No, it's the
In my
same as
mind.
like if you go to Cold Rock or Cold Stone, for those of
Yes,
you in North
yes.
America, like you get the really chocolatey ice cream and then you stick a few gummy bears or something in
Yeah.
there, and it's
Yeah, that's
great.
what I do as well.
Yeah,
I think
same
I
here.
learned that from you when we used to get frozen yogurt in America all the time, and you would put gummy bears in it.
Yeah, so it's the same idea on the pizza, all the like Nutella and stuff, and you get the little gummy bear. It's a different kind of sweet.
Penny's mum, this is just a total tangent. Penny's mum had never had frozen yogurt before until we were out for dinner and we had it in the city. There's a lot of frozen yogurt places in the city in Sydney. And then next time we went to her house for dinner, she'd made, because she makes homemade ice cream, she had made homemade frozen yogurt and gone out and bought a bunch of stuff, including she had gone to a bubble tea shop and got the, like, the popping juice kind of filled pearl type things, gotten them to give her like 3 different big cups of those, as well as a bunch of other, like, candy and Corinthians type things. Like, it was very funny. It was good stuff.
That sounds like the people with dignity version of what a group of friends and I used to do in college, which we called the trough.
Oh, great! This is going to be good.
And basically, we because we loved Cold Rock, but it's so expensive, right?
The
like,
trough. What is the trough gonna be?
So
I can't wait to find out.
Well, no. So we would buy, like, those like 4-liter things of Neapolitan ice cream you can get.
Okay, yeah.
And then we go to Woolies, we'd buy one of those, and then we just buy a bunch of lollies. So like gummy bears, chocolate things. We'd let the ice cream melt a little bit, shovel the things in there, refreeze it, then open it up, and then just all eat it out of the tub together while watching something.
Yeah,
because this was the phase of college where I was living like there was like a little adjunct house at the college, so it was like 4 of us in there. But we just eat like the whole thing in one go, and it was called the trough because of the way people would fight over the last bits. It was great.
That does sound good.
Yeah, it's like funny. I'm too cootie sensitive for that now, but like living in college made it easier for some reason, and I think COVID's made us all more precious about that.
Yeah, that does sound fun.
It was great. It was just homemade Cold Rock, basically.
Yeah. Anyway, so fun to talk about crazy foods.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Going right back to Fancy Swamp's answer, I also really liked their idea, and I kind of want to take this forward, brainstorming stuff real packed up too. So their thinking was, you do get a lot of foods that advertise something being missing from them, really. Like you get low fat, sugar free. Like it is very common for a food to say, proudly, I am missing this component. So their strategy was kind of to come at that from a different angle. So like their first example was like friendless pizza. So it was like pizza that you could only eat by yourself or something. But yeah, I love the idea of like coming at it from, okay, what's a more symbolic or different ingredient that a food could be missing to make it lost?
Yeah. It's good stuff. So we got a new discussion question this week.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell the people what it is?
Okay, sorry. I thought since it was yours, you'd want to do it.
Okay.
But yeah. No, okay. Well, I'm doing it now. Our new discussion question is: who would be the most annoying person you can think of to style a filibuster homunculus after?
Yeah.
So obviously we've had one based on Alexander.
Yeah.
And Sir Percival was clearly based on, well, Reuben.
Yep.
No, that was me saying you should say
based on me.
Oh, okay. So let us know who you think would be the most annoying person.
Yeah, I'm easily impressed with the answer that I thought of as well, which is DJT, the old Prez. But so somebody can put that answer, but some people, if you're not first responding, you have to do a different answer. That's my rule.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can leave your answers to that in the discussion thread, which you can find linked in the show notes down below.
Yep. Don't forget to check out our website, doofmedia.com, as well. That's where you can find all the details on the other shows on the Doof Network as well. Want to give another shout out to Pale in Comparison because they're back now, and I really enjoyed their episode this week. I'm so glad that they're doing episodes again. I can't wait to hear them go through the rest of the wild ride that is Arc 14 of Pact.
Yeah. If you want to support the Duff Media Network, you can go to patreon.com/Duff Media and become a patron. Get all kinds of bits of bonus content, including we released a new bonus episode of our bonus show, The High Ground, talking about the best movie in the Jurassic World series so far, Jurassic World 2. What was it? What was the subtitle of it? The Lost World?
Fallen Kingdom.
Fallen Kingdom. Yeah, that's right.
Which, honestly, apt title for what that movie did to itself. Yeah.
Yeah. Good times.
Yeah.
So yeah, head over to patreon.com/duffmedia for that.
And don't forget about Wildbow's Patreon, patreon.com/Wildbow. I'm working on a homunculus that's going to make you feel guilty every time you spend money if it's not on Wildbow's Patreon. And the way that you get
the only
out
way
of
you
it
get
is
an exclusion
donating to the Patreon.
Yeah. There you go. Cool. Well, then that's the end of our show. Bye, everyone.
See ya.